Shalom Rav HaYisrael Anachai Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon ספר חיים ברכה ושלום.
ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה.
ברכה ושלום. נזכר ונכתב לפניך. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל.
לחיים טובים ושלום.
ברוך אתה אדוני, עושה השלום. צדקה וברכה ורוח האמת וחיים ושלום.
Sing shalom, sing shalom, sing shalom, Tov v'racha.
וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל ואת כל העמים בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך.
Sing shalom, sing shalom, sing shalom, sing shalom. En bachesed Sing shalom, shalom, sing shalom.
ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo.
עושה
Being here at our symposium. Every year we invite members of our congregation to speak about the impact that Judaism has had on their life. This year, as a continuation of our courageous conversations and a desire to continue to explore how our congregation can be more aware and more inclusive, we asked 4 cherished members, all people either of color or raising children of color, all Jews by birth, to reflect on how being a non-white Jewish person or raising a non-Jewish white Jewish person has impacted their Jewish journey or the journey of their children, if at all. So we'll hear from Chris Brown, Mansi Esparza, Scott Scher, and finally Cameron Wu. And I wanted to give a special thanks to Rabbi Jurgen for coordinating this year's symposium speakers. Take it away.
Good afternoon. I struggled with writing this speech because it brought back memories of when I stood before my then congregation in New York as an adult bat mitzvah, and how I find myself 30 years later still giving a speech about the impact of Judaism on my life as a person of color. My experiences as a Jew of color have been both negative and positive. For instance, whenever I would say that I was Jewish, it was then, and still is now, followed by the phrase, "Funny, you don't look Jewish." Or when someone noticed that I was wearing a chai or a Star of David around my neck without knowing anything about me, felt it their right to say, "You don't have enough trouble?" And then walk away, leaving me with an empty pit in my stomach. I often wondered, was it too much trouble for them to simply say shalom? To begin, I did not convert to Judaism. I am Jewish by birth. But sadly, during my childhood, I felt little, if no connection, to my Jewish heritage, mainly due to the fact that my family didn't fit the stereotypical Eastern European Jew, which many define as being Jewish. And so, my sister Lizette, of blessed memory, and I didn't have the experience to go to temple, attend Hebrew school, or becoming a bat mitzvah. We were Jews in name only. The only connection I had to my Jewish heritage was through my grandmother, Bracha, of blessed memory, when she would light Shabbat candles or light the Hanukkah menorah. The only validation I had that I was Jewish was when we visited her friends in Brooklyn, which was usually around Rosh Hashanah, hearing them speak in Yiddish and eating honey cake made by Mrs. Locks. Even during those visits, which were very nice, I couldn't wait to leave because I felt like a novelty and very uncomfortable. It wasn't until I enlisted in the United States Army when I had to acknowledge being Jewish and have it engraved on my dog tags. And when I met my soulmate and husband, Carl. Once it became apparent that we were to be married, I explained to him that I had to first get my grandmother's blessing and that our children would have to be raised Jewish. His company commander, who was also Jewish, said, "Carl, if you marry that girl, get used to wearing a yarmulke." Not long after, my grandmother suffered a heart attack and was admitted in hospital in Long Island. Who knew that a visit from one of the clergies, Rabbi Stephen Moss, would change and impact our lives? Because her religion was listed as JW, which could mean either Jehovah's Witness or Jewish, Rabbi Moss went to her room. He could see that she was a woman of color and didn't question her lineage or Jewish ancestry when she said she was Jewish, but instead prayed for her health and recovery. He was more impressed by her ability to speak Hebrew, Yiddish, and German, and asked what synagogue she belonged to. When she told him she didn't and explained about her experiences when attending high holiday services as a guest of her friend Mrs. Locks, Rabbi Moss told my grandmother that our family would be welcomed at his temple. That visit not only brought renewed health and healing to my grandmother, but also impacted her life and eventually ours. At our first Friday night Shabbat service, Rabbi Moss invited me up to say the blessing before lighting the Shabbat candles. And after months of attending Sabbath services and participating in the rituals, I felt both validated and connected to my Jewish heritage. Initially, Carl didn't attend service, but he remained supportive. When he finally attended Shabbat services, he expressed to me that this was more in tune with his beliefs and would continue attending. We were now active participants and felt a sense of belonging at B'nai Israel. Not long after, Rabbi Moss asked about enrolling the girls, Erica and Celine, in Hebrew school. Carl expressed his concern with Rabbi Moss about how he would be able to help his girls with their Hebrew studies, and soon after started taking courses in basic Hebrew and learning about Judaism, and somewhere in the middle started taking adult conversion classes, converted, and also made his bar mitzvah. We also inquired about enrolling the girls in Hebrew day school. Rabbi Moss said we had two options, either conservative or Orthodox, but that he felt the conservative day school would be a better fit. We called and set up an appointment with the conservative Hebrew day school They sounded eager to meet with our family. But when we arrived to meet with the principal, I remembered having to wait a good while before we went into his office. The principal, who was also a rabbi, let's just say, he made us feel unwelcomed. His words were unkind and derogatory. And Carl and I left feeling angry and hurt. However, when we went to meet with the principal at the Orthodox Hebrew Day School, our reception was the exact opposite. We were made to feel welcomed, and based on our experience at the conservative day school, asked how they would address issues of prejudice and/or racism. Needless to say, we were happy by the response given by the principal and enrolled the girls in Hebrew Academy of Suffolk County, beloved known as HASC. I am happy to say that all 4 of our daughters attended HASC and still keep in touch with their friends since kindergarten. In 2005, Carl came down on orders to Fort Sam Houston, which meant we had to move to San Antonio, Texas. By then, our daughters, Jasmine and Tatiana, were preparing for their bat mitzvah. Even though Carl grew up in San Antonio, we were unfamiliar with any Reform Jewish synagogues and faced with having to start over. Our plans were to find someone that would tutor the girls in preparation for their B'nai Mitzvah and then fly back to Long Island to the week of the scheduled date. Rabbi Moss said that it was still important for us to continue going to Shabbat services and that there was a Reform synagogue in San Antonio called Temple Beth-El. And he gave me the phone number and address and emphasized that I needed to get on this ASAP before the girls had to register for Hebrew school. It took me 2 weeks to make that call. I was afraid of the things I heard about people in Texas and also being rejected because we were Jews of color. When I finally got up enough nerve to make that call, I was relieved when I got the answering machine. And then relief turned to panic when Nancy Gerson picked up. I was then faced with telling her that we had just moved to San Antonio, that my daughters needed to enroll in Hebrew school, and, by the way, we're an African-American family. Nancy's response was, "And when can you come in for an appointment?" That word "and" to me meant that it didn't matter that we were Jews of color and that we would be welcomed. Jasmine and Tatiana were enrolled in Hebrew school. We became members of Temple Beth-El. I joined the sisterhood and volunteer choir. Carl joined the brotherhood, and, by the way, Jasmine and Tatiana celebrated their bat mitzvahs and confirmation here at Temple Beth-El. At both B'nai Israel and Temple Beth-El, we built many meaningful relationships and experienced the love and support from both Temple families in times of joy and celebration and in times of illness and deep sadness. I feel very fortunate and blessed to have reconnected with my Jewish heritage, a most precious gift that my grandmother Bracha of blessed memory gave to us to pass down from generation to generation. L'dor v'dor. Thank you.
I'm leaving my mask on as a dental hygienist. I think it's attached to me already, so I hope you can hear me well. I was born and raised in Mexico City, where at the age of 2, I started attending a school, which was a Jewish private school. In my class, there were other 2 girls who also had darker hair, olive skin, and a Hispanic last name. Also at the Jewish Community Center, the shul, and the youth group, there were also Jewish kids who looked like me. It was not until 2nd or 3rd grade where my classmates, who were mostly Ashkenazi descendants, started to question why I was there, if I really belonged, if my last name was a very common last name in a predominantly Catholic country. That's when I questioned, should I be here? Do I really belong here? My mother explained to me that we were Spaniard descendants, Sephardic Jews. That is why we had a Hispanic last name. Her reassurance helped me not to feel like the odd kid in school. Being literally almost 24/7 within the Jewish community while growing up reinforced my faith and know that even if our religion was a minority, we matter and we were special. I love celebrating all the holidays, like Sukkot, Purim, Tu B'Shvat, and Simchat Torah being some of my favorites. Every year, I would get so excited to collect money for the program that planted trees in Israel under my name. This made me feel so special, like if I was part of Israel for years to come. I doubt my tree's still there, but at the tender age of 12, my parents decided to finally move to San Antonio, which caused my bat mitzvah to be postponed. Since my parents were already getting a divorce, not having a bat mitzvah put the first dent in this connection and left feeling less Jewish. English was my 4th language, and I was not very fluent at it. With a broken family, I had to adjust to a new culture and a lifestyle. I truly disconnected from the Jewish community. It was hard, but what kept me going was my faith and my prayers that things would get better. It was not easy at all, but I never lost hope. Being able to write with my Jewish class childhood friends helped. I remember once I received a letter in high school from my friend Karen while she was at the kibbutz. In the letter, she mentioned, can you believe I had to clean all the toilets in the kibbutz? As I was reading the letter, I thought, man, I've had to clean my toilet for all these years. We no longer had a maid to help us do it. At that moment, I was sad also because we had talked about our experiences and trying to be at the kibbutz at the same time since we were in 5th grade. Since my move here in 1991, I have always explained what is the difference between being Jewish and those who are born in Israel. People are always shocked to know that I'm from Mexico and that I'm Jewish and that I was not born in Israel. They always assume that I'm Catholic. I have gotten used to it and it no longer bothers me. Being a Jewish of color has definitely started conversation when meeting new people. I have overcome being judged by my religion or question if I truly belong with other Jewish because of my last name. That might explain when in college, if I try to date a Jewish guy, I will feel inferior or not Jewish enough. I attended San Antonio College, and I decided to take a Hebrew class being so close to SAC. That was my first time that I learned about Temple Beth-El, and I was trying to be part of the community. That was me still trying to connect back to my roots. And at the same time, it made me sad because when I would come to Shabbat, I would see all the families and the parents with their kids. And my parents were, separated, and my brother had his life. So I decided it was too sad for me to do. But I was trying to still reconnect with my roots. In speech, I decided to do a presentation on how to make latkes. So little by little throughout my college years, I tried to always have that Jewish faith in me and shine and still feel connected at some point. So for me, it's never been about being discriminated based on my skin color, but rather my last name. When I was expecting my son, I knew I needed to reconnect with the Jewish community and make sure he learned that being an American with a Hispanic last name and also a Sephardic Jew is normal, even if it feels as if it seems a bit abnormal to others. I have 2 children who have also experienced people assuming they're not Jewish based on their last name. At school, they have taken the opportunity to let their classmates and teachers know of their religion during the winter and spring holiday season. My son has worn his kippah from time to time, and when he has done so, he walks a little bit prouder and a little bit taller. For my kids, being a Jew of color is a bit different than my upbringing, since I also have to deal with being part of an interfaith family. From a young age, they question my husband why he's not Jewish. And my husband just tells them that's how I was raised, and my kids have learned to accept that. But having them attend a Jewish preschool, celebrating the Jewish holidays, and being part of the Temple Beth-El community since an early age, I believe has strengthened their Jewish faith, as well as having a place where they can feel safe and not being judged by their last name or their interfaith family. My husband puts a Christmas tree at home every year, since that's his tradition. And for a long time, my kids called it the Hanukkah bush. Why do you ask? Because my son decorated one year with all the dreidels that he had cut out in preschool one year. So they definitely know how to put a spin on Christmas. I'm thankful for my kids. Because of them, I got to find my way back to the amazing Jewish community. Raising my kids has brought so many great childhood memories that I share with them constantly. These past years have also made me want to finally plan my bat mitzvah at my tender age in my early 40s. Thank you.
Hi. I'm one of the luckiest men alive to have 2 amazing sons, Aaron and Jonah, and a loving husband, David. And I'm honored and humbled to be asked to talk about my experience being a white dad with Black multiracial children. I admit that every day I'm astonished by how amazing my family is. Reflecting upon the paths that brought me and my family into this world and thinking about the directions we are taking is central to my Jewish life experience. Like many of my university colleagues, I often have trouble tuning out email and pausing my research in the evenings and on weekends. But one of the benefits of an academic life is having significant flexibility in work-life schedules. Inspired by friends who had fostered several kids, a few years after surpassing the hurdle of tenure, I thought I had the time and extra rooms so that I could help out a kid in need. Influenced by advertisements that asked, "Why not you?" I took the leap into learning about foster care. All told, it took 8 months from the start of licensing classes for the bureaucratic checks and balances machine to complete. The day after giving the spring term's final exam, and just 20 minutes after sitting down with coffee at my dining room table for a meet and greet and to revise paperwork, my social worker excused herself to answer her cell phone. She nodded a few times, then turned and asked me if I would care for 2 babies. I just kind of remember this stuff. Stunned, I said yes, and arranged for a colleague to teach my summer course and began the frenetic search for baby equipment in big box stores all over town. The next day, the doorbell rang and a parade of social workers marched in with a stack of 3-ring binders and a newborn and a 10-month-old. I signed a lot of papers, got a lot of phone numbers, made a lot of appointments, heard a lot of thank yous. When signing up to be a foster parent, I listed no preferences regarding gender, racial, ethnic identity, nor age. I feel that the fantastic mysteries that brought the boys and me together, and later my husband into our lives, are just as incredible as the unknowns that all parents and children experience, regardless of the circumstances of birth. In our case, though, we did have the exceptional experience of having the new humans delivered directly to my front door, almost as if flown in by stork. About 8.5 years into my new life with the boys, a friend from years ago graduate school got in contact with me via Facebook. We arranged a weekend visit, and I am living proof that lightning can reach the arrival platform of the San Antonio airport, and our family now has a white papa and a white dad. With Black History Month, all the kids I know have some awareness of American history and civil rights. I have been able to address issues in articles about Texas history that I feel are absent, dismissed, or are improperly or inadequately presented. From news, academic research, and my friends, I keep learning about the multiple levels of scrutiny that impact the lives of Black boys. I've witnessed several incidents firsthand and wonder about their experiences when we are apart. I question if the boys and their friends were in time out because they were really too rambunctious, or if they are being profiled by assumptions about whose fidgeting is okay and whose fidgeting is not. Horrific news stories keep me up at night. I worry that someone in the neighborhood might see water pistols and Nerf guns and think they are real and dangerous. I wonder if it's safe to wear a hoodie when the boys are not inside the fence of a schoolyard. I wonder when they're older if someone might think it unusual that a Black teenager is driving in my neighborhood, which is predominantly white. I feel that I recognize so much of what is white privilege because I am white and my sons are not. Following traditions, Aaron and Jonah have English and Hebrew first and last names that honor my father, grandparents, and dear family friends. Growing up in a Jewish family, I feel confident that I can assume my Jewish identity as a given, even though I know that multiple variables may affect what it means to be Jewish both today and at other times, as has been the case in so many periods and cultural contexts. Beyond my family tree, being Jewish to me is part of my approach to life. In much of the humanities and social sciences, including in my area of teaching and research as a professor of modern and contemporary art history at UTSA, The concept of the subject in a lot of academic literature supplements the idea of the individual. Subjectivity describes how we are subjects of and respond to the social and cultural discourses of our time. We see the world, and the world sees us, and we have, claim, occupy, and change ideas of who we are on a continuous basis. In how many ways are each of us different people right at this moment than we were a few years ago, a lot of years ago, or even just this morning? I take seriously that every day it's important to strive towards the potential of tikkun olam. I know the concept isn't exclusively Jewish, but for me, it's a reminder that in our short time on earth, our actions, and maybe also our hearts and dreams, write us into the book of life. While the United States may be a compound quilt or a complex stew of heritages and viewpoints, I don't think we can take for granted that ideological powers and structural systems affect daily life, and that us, them, and not in my backyard mentalities can cause a lot of harm. While there are certainly disagreements in the Jewish tent, respecting social, cultural, and individual differences is foundational in the ethics that I understand, value, and cherish. Thank you.
Good afternoon. When asked to speak at this year's Yom Kippur Symposium, the topic we were given was how, if at all, do you feel being a Jew of color has impacted your Jewish life experience? Growing up in San Antonio as a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities, the people of this city are more accepting of other customs and traditions. And as a result, I never felt ostracized or discriminated against. Also, being raised as a member of Temple Beth-El, very open-minded and inclusive congregation, I am pleased to say that to date, I have not felt being a person of color in and of itself has impacted my Jewish life experience. However, that is not to say that as a Jew, I have not experienced what it is like being a member of a minority community. Judaism has given me different lessons during each phase of my life, and Judaism's impact can be summarized by how I was raised, how Judaism has shaped me, and how Judaism will guide me moving forward. Growing up, Judaism gave me a community. No matter where I was, school, sports, and society in general, there were only ever a few Jews. However, when I would come to religious school and to services, I was one among many just like me. And while I did not know it yet, I would lean on that universally bonded community. In December of 2009, my parents informed me my mother had cancer. And during her illness and after her death, I increasingly relied on services as a reprieve. While attendance was initially out of a sense of obligation, I came to enjoy going to services. It made the sadness a little lighter and a new dawn seem not so far away. Services brought a sense of peace and provided welcome structure to an otherwise uncertain future. Judaism's first lesson was the importance of community, how structure allows us to handle uncertainty, and gave me the freedom to love my religion through my path. While at the University of Texas, I was selected to the Normandy Scholars Program for World War II. Scholars take 5 upper division history classes to learn about the 5 major countries involved in the war. One of the best parts of the program is getting to travel all over Europe and see the places you have studied all semester. The most meaningful place was the Normandy Cemetery. I stood there looking at a sea of crosses for grave markers and was shocked by something. In this sea, I only saw 2 Star of David headstones. I was drawn to them to pay my respects. Historically, many men lied on their entrance paperwork to conceal their religion. The logic of this was well-founded and straightforward. If they were killed, or worse, captured by the Germans, their dog tags would not identify them as Jews. These men, however, were not afraid of the likely consequences and were proud to be Jewish. And further, these headstones allowed me to perform a mitzvah. While the immaculate maintenance of the cemetery cannot be overstated, it was also apparent that no one had visited these men for some time. And so I immediately located stones and placed them on their grave markers and recited the Kaddish for them. The concept of remembrance, particularly for those who have no one to remember them, is the most famous in our liturgy. The words remind us how vital remembrance is to our traditions and reinforces the belief that we live on in those we love and in our actions. On that mid-May day, I was awestruck by their courage in going to war and their refusal to conceal their identity as Jews. Finally, Judaism will guide me through my future career. Law school emphasized the importance of using our skills to help our clients through difficult periods in their lives. Have enthusiasm for this profession, always have a goal, and most importantly, always be willing to work for it. All of these things will continue to influence my career and continue to push me to serve others. With every act of kindness and professionalism, whether small or Herculean, I can make a difference and improve the world. I have been given many gifts in this life: my family, my good upbringing, my education, my health, and the focus to accomplish my goals. In addition, I am fortunate to have found a career that I enjoy and a career where my skills can directly aid others. Service to others is a responsibility and a privilege that Judaism commands of us. I look forward to Judaism continually reminding me to live by the idea that we are worth only what we are willing to give to others and to leave this world a better place. When asked what Judaism means to me, I have the answer. It is reassurance that a community stands with you. It showed me how to love something on my own accord and by my path. It showed me how to be proud of who I am. It is a reminder of the responsibility and privilege that I hold to improve the world. That is what Judaism means to me. Thank you. May you have an easy fast.
This year of 5782, may we learn from these extraordinary members of our congregation to welcome people with open arms regardless of what they look like, to not question someone's Jewish identity because of the inherent bias many of us have, that Jews can only be white and Ashkenazic and have a Jewish last name, a fallacy to the extreme. May we continue to recognize the impact that one's comment, one conversation, one situation can have on our lives and on the lives of others. May we cherish the influence our ancestors have on us. May we continue and grow Jewish traditions within our lives. May we be open to teach others about Judaism and how Jewish doesn't look or act in only one way. May we not erase diverse history, but celebrate it and remember it. May we love Judaism through our own paths, stand together as one community, and remind us how we should try and change the world. And above all, may we pass on to our children the importance of being strong, proud Jews, and do that ourselves. Gamar Chatima Tova. Our afternoon service will begin at 2:30.